Hello and welcome to Football Talk by the 2 Point Conversion. My name is Dylan Jackson. Today I'm joined by Jacob LaQuire. Jacob, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's we're getting closer to fall, right? Closer to some cooler weather, some holidays and stuff. So can't complain, and hopefully closer to another Panthers victory.
Yeah, I'm kind of a sucker for fall weather in particular. Anytime you can wear like the hoodie shorts combo is perfect weather to me. And Mississippi is kind of rage baiting me right now because it's that way in the mornings. Like it'll be upper 50s, low 60s, which is perfect to me. And then in the late afternoon, it'll get up to like 85, which is just out of range. But it is what it is. It'll continue to get cooler.
I think we're here in Charlotte. I think we're finally leaving the third summer or whatever you want to call it. Like we got false fall a couple weeks ago, and the highs have been mid to high 70s, but I can see on the weather app that it's gonna start dipping down into the 60s. The high that is. So I'm excited. Like I can crack the window when I sleep and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that's perfect weather. We have a full podcast today. First, I'm gonna just plug everything. Obviously, you can follow the show at 2p_conversion. You follow Jacob at Jacob LaQuire, myself at dj.png. You can follow the show on Substack at 2pointconversion.com, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Jacob, we're gonna talk about the best teams in the NFL, whether we are buying or selling, what they have done so far. We're going to talk about some trade candidates that could be on the move soon. Obviously, our games of the week, which we do every single week, a quick college check-in, and then, of course, our takes. So the first thing that we're going to do today is buy or sell some of these, we'll call them elite NFL teams so far, the best of the best, at least in terms of record. We're going to start with the 5-1 league leading Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jacob, are you buying or selling the 5-1 Bucks?
You have to buy this team. They're losing players left and right, and they're still beating teams. They're beating good teams, right? They just beat Seattle a couple of weeks ago. They beat San Francisco this past week. Two teams that I thought maybe had good matchups against them, but each time Tampa Bay continued to persevere. Baker Mayfield playing like one of the best in the league right now, if not maybe the best, maybe the most valuable. But they've shown time and again, excuse me, that they're a real team. So you have to buy them.
This is a really good team, and they've dealt with a lot of injuries, especially on the offensive front. Bucky Irving's missed a few games. You've got Chris Godwin, who's missed most of the season. Mike Evans has missed most of the season. Emeka Egbuka now dealing with, I think it's a strain of some sort. Um, there's plenty of offensive line injuries as well. There's a few defenders that have dealt with a few things, but this Buccaneers team, despite all of that, has won, and not only won, but they've done so against like really good competition. And I get that like every single one of their games, other than this past week, has been a margin of victory of like 3 points basically. But I mean, they've beaten Atlanta, who has a winning record. They've beaten Houston, who's struggled early in the year, but I still think that that's a very competent football team. They lose to Philly, but they've beaten Seattle and San Francisco in back-to-back weeks. So this is a Buccaneers team that has an MVP candidate. You mentioned it with Baker Mayfield. He's been excellent this year, third in the league in EPA in terms of passing. But I really think that the talent level of this team to sustain this level of play despite as many injuries to key offensive players as they've had, that is incredibly impressive. And I think an indictment of what Light has done, the general manager there. So I'm definitely buying this Tampa Bay team.
For me, Jason Light is second to none when it comes to talent acquisition and building. Obviously, he played a key part in the Brady era stuff, but his drafts have just been knocked out of the park every single year. He finds contributors, especially in the late rounds as well. I'm looking at our 2 point conversion top 10 list, and as a whole, we collectively have Tampa Bay number one. I know you and I don't have him, or don't have them rather, number one specifically, but as a whole, our whole Substack and website has Tampa number one. It's just hard to not call them an elite team at this point. What more do they have to prove, right?
Yeah, and they are going to have to prove it again. Regardless, they play in Detroit on Monday Night Football this week. That is a massive game. They play New England in 2 weeks, Buffalo a week after that, and then the Rams as well in late November. So it's a pretty tough schedule up until December, but yeah, I mean, they've continually beat good teams. They've done so in convincing fashion, I think, and they're only going to get better as their team gets more of these players back from injury. I know that more injuries are going to happen, but it feels like a lot of these guys, Mike Evans, Bucky Irving, are on the precipice of returning and making this offense even better.
It's just a shame that as soon as one player gets back or a couple of players get back, you have Ibuka injured, right? Or you have Godwin in and out of the lineup. Like once this team's at full strength, they might be the best team in the league. But until then, they're just going to have to keep making do with the fourth and fifth receiver. And Baker's been doing that. Tez Johnson had a crazy touchdown catch in this game against San Francisco. Cameron Johnson, another receiver, had a touchdown catch in this game. Baker's just making it happen. And like I'm saying, until a team proves that Tampa is an elite, you just have to respect it and call them elite. Unfortunately for us NFC South fans here.
So Baker Mayfield is third in passing EPA. Where do you think he ranks in terms of rushing EPA?
Ooh, I don't know. He had a crazy scramble against San Francisco where he broke like 10 tackles. So I'm going to say maybe eighth among QBs.
So you said eighth among QBs. He's actually first among all players. Granted,
Oh, wow.
QBs are very inflated in terms of rushing EPA. They typically, with the scrambles, are just naturally going to have more rushing EPA. But Baker Mayfield first above Jalen Hurts, Spencer Rattler, Mahomes, and any running back that you can think of. So he has been electric. Rico Dowdle actually first in the NFL in rushing EPA right now. Baker Mayfield is, by all accounts, just having an MVP caliber season through the first 6 weeks. Let's talk about a team that I think we've found pretty fascinating to open the season, and it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers are 4-1. They have extra draft capital. They have a team that's been winning so far. So far, they have beaten the New York Jets, New England Patriots, Vikings, Browns, and lost only one game to the Seattle Seahawks. What do you make of their season so far, and are you buying or selling what the Steelers have done?
Well, to start, I'm going to say hold, kind of in the middle, the cop out answer, but I think I would buy them still being the division favorite, maybe sell them on being a true elite Super Bowl contender. I think they're doing what we've expected so far, and that's win games in the regular season. Coming into the season, I know a lot of people said that if Rodgers can provide better QB value than what Russell Wilson was able to provide last year, Justin Fields for a handful of games, then this team would be competitive in a lot of games, and they have been so far. They the Seattle game, traveling across the country, losing by 2 touchdowns, that is a tough one, but it's better when you see how good Seattle's been playing since then, right? Talk about Baker Mayfield. Sam Darnold could be in the MVP discussion if his team had a couple more favorable bounces of the ball. And then the other games they've just won. And they have a Thursday night game tomorrow, as we're here on a Wednesday evening against Cincinnati, which I would imagine Pittsburgh is probably the favorite in that one. If they continue to keep playing like this, they'll probably win the division. They'll make a playoff run or make the playoffs rather. And yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to count them out. I think they have a good enough defense. I think the offense is just good enough. The marriage between Rodgers, DK Metcalf, and Arthur Smith, I think has worked out so far through 5 weeks. DK had another good game this past week against Cleveland. I saw that the Steelers are interested in trading for a receiver, or I saw a report about that, and I think that's just hilarious considering they traded for one and traded one away. But I do feel if they get another receiver, that's probably the missing piece in this offense. That and like a true bona fide running back. But I don't know. I just like the team, and I think they're good enough to win enough games to win the division down the stretch.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Aaron Rodgers so far is he's been doing enough to get by with the surrounding talent on this team. I actually really like the way that this running game is designed between, what Kenny Gainwell has done, what Jalen Warren has done. Caleb Johnson as a third round pick, hasn't really even gotten all that much run, probably due to some extenuating circumstances in that Seattle game. Um, but yeah, I think I'm still gonna sell a little bit here. Even at 4-1, I don't think their schedule has been the hardest in the world, and I think that they largely have kind of underperformed, even though they're 4-1. So that opening game against the Jets, going back to that, it's kind of the most competent that Justin Fields has looked arguably in his entire career. I think that might be a little bit more testament to just the overall pass protection in that game, the way that the Steelers kind of failed to stop the run in that game. The Jets had a very explosive running game. But you even go back to their win against New England in New England, where it took essentially that entire offense imploding. I think they had a +5 turnover margin in a one-score game, with like 3 of their turnovers coming in the red zone. I get that that's a part of the game, but it just feels a little bit fluky to me for them to have won that one. And then obviously it's hard for me to count the previous 2 games the same way, with Minnesota having Carson Wentz looking pretty inept, I think, for a large part of the game. In That was in Dublin, right? Um, or was that in London? I'm not
It
sure.
was in Ireland, yeah.
Okay, and then against the Browns, like Kenny Pickett, or not Kenny Pickett. Yeah, I mean he's pretty similar to Kenny Pickett, I guess, and Dylan Gabriel, but um, I don't think that he's an NFL starting quarterback, and I think that the talent difference kind of carried them over the edge there. So even though they are 4-1, I think I'm still a little bit underwhelmed with what we've seen on a down to down basis, but that's kind of how it's been with this Steelers team always, forever in the Mike Tomlin era, especially over the past half decade. So it's nothing new, really, but I am still going to sell. Um, I think that their upcoming schedule is pretty tough. They play Green Bay, Indy, and LA in 3 of their 4 next games. The Chargers, I should mention, not the Rams. But that's a tough slate after this Bengals game on Thursday night. So we'll see if it continues. Obviously, they have a really good head start, being 4-1 already, and I think it's going to be tough to kind of maintain that record and that winning percentage. But again, they've impressed in certain areas so far. I think DK Metcalf has been a really great fit for this offense and what Aaron Rodgers has done in particular. But yeah, I'm going to sell in terms of them being a contender, but I think they should be the absolute overwhelming favorites in the AFC North.
It's so funny that those 3 games you mentioned, Green Bay, Indianapolis, and then in LA against the Chargers, those are sandwiched between 2 Bengals games. And just the state of the Bengals right now against this Steelers team, I think the Steelers should be favored. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make, right? I don't know if this is a real elite team by any means, but I think as long as the injuries continue to pile up in Baltimore, as long as Joe Burrow doesn't walk through the door in Cincinnati, and as long as, like, barring miracles in Cleveland, I think that Pittsburgh should be the favorite in that division.
And one of those upcoming games for the Steelers is against Green Bay, who we're going to talk about next. The Green Bay Packers, 3-1-1, have had, I would say, one of the weirdest seasons of any NFL team so far. Obviously, they trade for Micah Parsons. They start the season red hot against Detroit, against Washington. Then they lose to Cleveland. That was weird. They tie Dallas right after that, even weirder. And then a bye week followed by a win against the Cincinnati Bengals. So what do you make of this Packers team? Is it just kind of them getting settled? Is it like opening season jitters? I don't know if you could even call it that, with it being like week 7 at this point. But what do you make of this Packers team? And are you buying or selling?
They're a weird team, right? They're 1-1 against Joe Flacco on the season. I'm going to buy this team. I still don't have a lot of issues with this group, other than I think they need to get the offense being, like, consistently dominant, which I think they can be. I think they have the personnel to do that. I think the offensive line stuff will work itself out. They have some of the most like athletically gifted skill position players between Golden. They're getting Christian Watson back. Tucker Kraft is like a huge mismatch in the pass game. And once they get Jordan Love playing more consistent, he's been playing better the last couple of weeks. I think he's top 2 in EPA per dropback on the season. But I think once the offense figures itself out, this team should be fine. I still like the defense. Micah Parsons is still, I guess, finding his footing in Green Bay. And once he does, I think he's going to be a monster. So I'm going to buy this team. I don't have a lot of concerns about them being a playoff team long term, but it has been weird, or it has been weird to start the season with a loss to Cleveland. That's Cleveland's only win, and that was when they were wearing the all brown, new brown helmet uniforms, and then tying Dallas in Dallas on Sunday Night Football. That was kind of Jerry Jones's win there, if you can even say that. So weird team, but I'm still going to buy them.
Yeah, it's hard not to buy this team. I think that there's an argument to be made that they have the most complete roster in the NFL. And if you add in the fact that Jordan Love is capable of competing at an elite level, you add in the fact that they have a blue chip edge rusher on the other side, arguably the best edge rusher in the NFL, maybe below Myles Garrett. But yeah, it's really hard not to think of the Packers as one of the best teams in the NFL. I still like, if I had to say, I don't want to play against one team in particular right now today, it's probably the Packers. And I get that the Bucks have a better record. I get the Colts have a better record. I'm still very, very high on this Packers team, despite that 2-game stretch of weird results with Cleveland and Dallas. But yeah, I think that it's going to be down the stretch. This team, Tampa Bay, you could maybe throw the Eagles or Lions in there, but yeah, I'm absolutely going to buy this team, and I think that they have, from a talent perspective, arguably the best team in the NFL.
You said that's the one team you don't want to play. Guess where our Panthers are going week 9?
That's right.
Yeah, with the this is our weekly uniform talk. That's the 100-year throwback game where they're wearing
Oh
the
god,
leather
I
helmets.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yeah. I forgot about that. Truly, like I think that is one of the worst, if not the worst, uniform that's going to be worn this year. Like a despicable helmet.
Unless the Giants bring that one back from last year, or the Steelers bring out the Bumblebees, I'm gonna have to agree.
I actually like the like retro Packers uniforms most of the time.
Like the
Um,
blue and yellow one, right? Where it has
Blue
like
and yellow.
the
Yeah.
circle logo. I don't mind that one, yeah, but this one that they're debuting is just odd.
Yeah, like the one with it's like blue on the bottom, yellow on the top with the yellow helmets. I really like those, even with the yellow dot and the brown helmet. I like those too, but the fake leather helmet it is one of the worst things I think I've ever seen. And I hate that that's going to be on the main screen in that window. So it sucks. But speaking of kind of a team that has some pretty wretched retro uniforms, not their current retro uniforms, but actually I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're not talked about often, but do you know the Eagles like light blue and yellow retro uniforms?
They're like the Minneapolis Lakers ones, right? Like that
Yeah,
color.
yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Terrible, terrible. But that was kind of a segue into the Eagles, who their season started out red hot, 4-0. The last 2 games have not gone their way, to say the least. They lose to the Denver Broncos in the fourth quarter, and then they lose in New York on Thursday Night Football, to a team that just looked completely better than them most of the game. And that's not something you want to say about a New York Giants team that has won like sub 7 games consistently for the last half decade or so, other than the one Daniel Jones playoff win year. But yeah, what do you make of this Eagles team? How do you feel about like their season so far, where it's going to go from here? Are you buying or selling the Philadelphia Eagles?
I'm going to start by saying I'm selling this team. You and I talk a lot about when we're looking at teams, the vibe of the team, right? Coming into the season, the Dolphins vibes were like in the gutter. What was another team? The Colts vibes were kind of weird with the QB discussion. And right now, I think the Philadelphia Eagles vibes could not be worse. It seems like every week they're having a players only meeting that's just Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and AJ Brown, trying to figure out how we're going to distribute touches and stuff like that. AJ Brown was saying during their win streak, yeah, I'd like to get the ball more, but I can't complain because we're winning. Well, now you're losing. So are the complaints going to be more outward? We see in this game where the Eagles just get dominated, especially in the run game. The run defense was bad. Their pass rush has struggled already. And we see a lackluster passing game and the one opportunity for a deep play where Devontae Smith just sits the corner down. Jalen Hurts just overthrows him. It would have been like a 90-yard walk-in touchdown. So I think the vibes are bad right now. When you see a lot of Eagles fans on Twitter saying we need to trade for this kind of player, when last year the team was like very good, almost perfect. I think that's another signal as well. And then just a 2-game losing streak. I don't think the Broncos are a bad team, but the Giants, I think it's tough to have the Giants double your score on Thursday Night Football. So I'm going to sell the Eagles.
Yeah, this team really hasn't gotten it going on the ground game like we maybe expected them to carry over some of that success from last year. Obviously, Saquon Barkley having the season that he did, but yeah, it's really tough. The vibes are. It feels almost like the follow up to their playoff run 2 years ago, where things just started going south in the middle of the season, and it never quite was the same. It feels very, very similar to that, and I think to maybe a lesser extent, just because they're still 4-2, they still are coming off of a you know Super Bowl winning season, but things don't look as cohesive as they do last year. Last year they had a like record-setting rushing offense. This year they're more like they're still top 10. They're just not number one, number two like they've consistently been. I actually think some of the wrinkles thrown in the offense have been solid additions. I love like the fake tush push trick plays. Even though I still think that play should probably be banned. I think the defense plays at a pretty consistently high level, excluding the game against the New York Giants. Um, it just doesn't feel cohesive. And I think we've really seen the warts in Jalen Hurts' game come out as a result of the running game looking so much worse than last year. And I say so much worse, they're still top 10, but you go from a record-setting rushing offense to just borderline top 10, and it's going to feel significantly different.
The similarities to the season you brought up, I guess that would have been the 2023 Philadelphia
Yeah.
season, are pretty significant, right? In that offseason, they lose Shane Steichen. They also lose Jonathan Gannon. But in this offseason, you lose Kellen Moore, right? They came off a Super Bowl appearance in that year, coming off a win this year. They started that season, 2023, like 10-1 or something like that, or it was very high, like maybe 10-2. And then the rest of the season, they were 1-5 or 1-6, whatever it was, because the defense just fell apart. They couldn't tackle, and it was completely like it's not a vibes based falling apart, but it's like an internal implosion kind of or crumbling, and that's kind of how it feels to start this season. You got to remember last season they started 2-2 and then went on that run, and I guess they've already passed that, but to your point, it's just not as good as last year. You're never going to have a year as good as the previous year. But yeah, I'm a vibes kind of guy. And when the vibe isn't good, I'm just going to sell the team.
So I mentioned their running game was still borderline top 10. That was just based off of a per run rate. Um, it's actually significantly worse than that. So in 2024, the Philadelphia Eagles were second in rushing yards per game with 179.3. How many rushing yards per game do you think that they're averaging right now in 2025?
Maybe 120.
They're averaging 95,
Ooh, that's
which is
that's about
80
half.
yards less, which is crazy. Um, Absolutely nuts. They are bottom 10 in rushing yards per game, which, considering the formula at which they won last year, being able to run the ball as much as they did. Over 50% of their plays were runs. It's going to feel a lot different than how it does this year. So from a talent perspective, not much has changed for Philly. Obviously, they lost a few defenders, Milton Williams, the edge rusher Josh Sweat to the Arizona Cardinals. There are a few other guys sprinkled in there. Mekhi Becton, probably the biggest one on offense, but to go from 179 rushing yards per game to less than 100 is a monumental drop off.
Tush pushes don't get you many yards. That's all I gotta say.
Crazy, crazy. So you're selling this Eagles team?
Correct.
I am also gonna sell. So with that, we're going to get to our next segment talking about some of the trade candidates around the NFL. There's a lot of guys, a lot of names that could be traded. There's so many bad teams, some bad teams that we didn't necessarily expect to be bad, like the Baltimore Ravens. But Jacob, who are some of the, or one of the trade candidates that you want to highlight first?
This is kind of cheating, but I'm going to say my first candidate is any Dolphins player. This Dolphins team, I think it couldn't be more over for them. I know we didn't do It's So Over for Dolphins last week, but I think it is. We'll talk about it in a sec. If they lose this week, it's definitely over. But any of the edge rushers that's not Chop Robinson, because he was the first round draft selection last year, like Bradley Chubb, I think could be a trade candidate. Jalen Phillips could be a trade candidate. Jalen Waddle, I think, could be a trade candidate as well. It would suck because you lose Tyreek Hill for the season to then lose your next best receiver. But I think there are quite a few teams out there that want receivers, and there are a lot of teams that need edge rusher help. So I think those three in particular, but it just wouldn't shock me if any Dolphins player were moved.
I would be pretty shocked if Waddle was, to be honest.
That's fair, but like if somebody like if the Giants offer you a second round pick and you expect that to be a top 15 second round pick, would you take that for Waddle?
Probably not. Not for Waddle. No. Receivers are just so hard to come by, and I get that I'm probably higher on Waddle than most people. Maybe if it was a late first round pick, I'd be more inclined. It would kind of be similar to. Do you remember when the Cardinals traded for Marquise Brown? They traded a first round pick for Marquise
Yes.
Brown and a third round pick. That was a draft night trade. Yeah. I think that would be similar compensation to what I would expect for Jalen Waddle. But I mean, he's under contract for several more years. There's no real rush to move him. And even when Tyreek Hill wasn't there, he before Hill was there looked like a true number one receiver, and has after Hill had his injury as well.
Yeah, Waddle started his career, his freshman or his rookie season. I believe he set the record for the most receptions by a receiver. I think Kyle Pitts, or not Pitts, somebody broke that the next year. And then he was also a back-to-back 1,000-yard receiver. So like, he's a good player, don't get me
Oh
wrong,
yeah.
but I think if you're trading and acquiring a contract like that, I think it would bump it down to like maybe a 2 and a 4, something like
Okay.
that, kind of compensation. I don't know. I'm not like a trade expert or anything, but it just wouldn't surprise me. The two edge rushers, though, I think there's a good chance one of those guys gets moved.
Even though the Titans are horrendous, they are one of the probably two or three worst teams in the NFL. Would you consider moving a second and a fourth round pick? Let's just assume top three in both rounds for Jalen Waddle.
I don't think the Titans are in any position to give away draft capital. So I would say no, even though like Cam Ward needs a real number one receiver, but it's going to be hard for me to move off any picks this year if you expect to. They already fired the coach, right? There's
Yeah.
not a ton of hope in that organization this season. So I would stay firm and then try to add a receiver in round one or round two or something. But it wouldn't shock me given how impulsive that organization seems to be. But me personally, I'm keeping my picks.
Carnell Tate feels like such a seamless fit for that offense with Cam Ward. But I digress. I have another receiver that I want to talk about, actually. Jacoby Myers for the Las Vegas Raiders. I think he's a very likely candidate to be traded. Obviously, he requested a trade before the season and was told no by the Raiders. I wonder if they're reevaluating that because the Raiders are now 2-4. The offense looks pretty inept despite Jacoby Myers still looking pretty decent. Geno Smith hasn't had the season that he's wanted. And the Raiders actually have a successor to Jacoby Myers in Jake Besh, or Jack Besh, the second round rookie receiver from TCU. I think that there's a chance Jacoby Myers, I think he's 28 years old right now, would go for potentially a third or fourth round pick. He's going to require a new contract, but he's a high level starting slot receiver that I think could be useful for a variety of contenders. The Bills, the Steelers, maybe they send him back to the Patriots. I think all three of those teams are really solid fits for Jacoby Myers.
I think Myers is a good candidate. You mentioned it. He requested a trade maybe a week before the season. It was very close to the start of the season, or excuse me, requested a trade before the start of the season, and didn't get it granted. Obviously, he's been a pretty good player, but Trey Tucker, I think, has gotten the majority of the number one looks or a lot of the downfield stuff. I think Myers would be useful on a number of teams. One team you didn't mention, I think the Giants could use a or not a possession receiver, but like a winner, like Jacoby
Yeah.
Myers, like a ball winner, given Malik Neighbors is injured and isn't going to be back this season. But I think that's a name that's should be at the top of the receiver list of potential trade candidates.
I think another sneaky team would be the Kansas City Chiefs as well. They kind of operate in a mode where they could never turn down receiver help. They've always consistently added to that room and done so in season. It would feel a little bit like a supercharged version of the DeAndre Hopkins trade from a year ago, but yeah, that's another team. Maybe the Commanders if their receiver injuries continue to stack up, but I think that there's so many suitors for Jacoby Myers in particular.
I think Atlanta is another spot as
Yeah.
well. If Darnell Mooney continues, I think he's going to play this week, but he's had injury woes to start the season, despite the fact that Drake London and Bijan Robinson looked incredible on Monday. They could always use more weapons, right? So there's no shortage of suitors for a guy like Jacoby Myers.
Who is your next trade candidate?
So the start of the Bengals season has not gone according to plan. Joe Flacco did not save this team. We said on Sunday after the games that this it's probably over for the Bengals. So I am hammering the Trey Hendrickson trade alarm again. I think the fact that they gave him a 1 year deal and didn't really extend him, or not a 1 year, it was like a raise this year, didn't extend him into the future, indicates that he's not in the long term plans. uh, they didn't trade him in the offseason, so this might shut down any trades from happening now. But if a team like San Francisco called and said, all right, we'll give you a 2 and a 4 plus a 2 next year or something like that, we really need a pass rusher. I don't think you could turn that down, especially if the Bengals are going to try to rebuild this year or in this upcoming draft and free agency. I don't know. I think he's probably the best edge rusher that would be available. Maybe Max Crosby, but he seems like the cornerstone piece for the Raiders. I think they'd hate to give him up. And I don't know. The Bengals love not paying people, so I think it'd be a win-win if Hendrickson were traded at the deadline.
They should absolutely trade him.
They
They
should
don't
they should have
seem
traded him 7 months ago.
if they traded him 7 months ago, they would have gotten a first round pick, I think,
Yeah,
pretty comfortably. And now, mid season on a 1 year deal, he's expensive. You're probably looking at like a late second, early third round pick potentially. Trey Hendrickson's not the youngest player ever either. I think he's 30 or 31 years old. So they should absolutely trade him, especially with how this season has gone. I get the feeling that they're still going to be in quote unquote evaluation mode over the next few weeks as Joe Flacco continues to become one with the offense, is how I'll put it. Uh, Joe Flacco is not going to save the Bengals season. I think that's pretty obvious. They play the Steelers this week, the Jets, Bears after that, and then the Steelers in New England after that. So um, up and down schedule, but I just think that the Bengals are in a situation where they need to acquire as much young, cost controlled talent as possible for the seasons that they still have Joe Burrow under contract. So This is a team where they're clearly only willing to pay a select few players, so might as well try and make the most of it while you can, and salvage any sort of Trey Hendrickson trade package you possibly can.
And it's clear that Hendrickson's not a guy that they want to pay long term. They've had
No.
multiple opportunities to do so. So it's going to be pennies on the dollar compared to what it could have been back in March or February or even last year's trade deadline. But I feel like you have to do it at this point.
And speaking of guys looking to get paid, the second guy I want to talk about is Brees Hall. So, running back for the New York Jets, he's had a pretty solid season so far. He's looked explosive. He's another year removed from some injuries, and he's going to be a free agent after this season. There was some weird rumors in the offseason that the Jets could be maybe looking to trade him in favor of making maybe Braylon Allen the starting running back, maybe drafting a running back in 2025. Neither of those things happened, and Brees Hall's still on this team, but he is an expiring free agent. He's very explosive. Oftentimes, with the running backs of his caliber, they're traded mid-season. I don't know if you remember, what was his name? Joel Ajayi for the Dolphins at the time was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for a fourth round pick. Eagles made a playoff run that year. I think the Dolphins were kind of middling. I think it would be similar compensation, like a fourth round pick for Brees Hall. Um, he's a running back that's going to be a free agent. Typically, those don't yield a ton in terms of draft capital, but I think that he, considering how this Jets season has gone, could definitely be on the block.
Yeah, it was Jay Ajayi from the
Yeah,
Dolphins to
yeah.
the Eagles, and I do remember him because a certain Panthers running back is having kind of a Jay Ajayi moment that he had that season. I think that was 2015, maybe that year was, maybe 2016, where he had like two Rico Dowdle type games, and then 2 games later he had another one. It was just a huge I don't even know how to describe it, like flash in the pan for his season. And then he got traded for pretty high compensation. So I could see something like this. There are a lot of running back needy teams out there from contenders. Looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, if like as long as they want to continue trotting out Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, the Chargers in lieu of the Marion Hampton injury, and then the Cardinals aren't necessarily a contender, but they've had so many running back injuries that somebody like Brees Hall could reignite their run game. So I think Brees Hall is certainly a good candidate. Alvin Kamara is somebody I would have said prior to last week, but the Saints did like a piece about Alvin Kamara where they asked him about, hey, how are you feeling about the organization, that kind of thing. And Kamara said he wants to stay in New Orleans. And the Saints say that they're going to honor that. You never know in the NFL, but I think Kamara is going to stay as a New Orleans Saint. So I think Brees Hall is probably the best running back trade candidate at this point. Maybe Ramondre Stevenson, if he didn't fumble every other play, could be another guy.
Chicago Bears make a ton of sense
Yeah.
for Brees Hall. He would kind of fill that, we'll call it the Jameer Gibbs role in Ben Johnson's offense, where, Brees Hall isn't somebody that you're going to want to give the ball 25 times a game, but he's going to give you an efficient 10 to 15 attempts, averaging close to 5 yards a carry, gives you something in the passing game as well. And he's just so much more natural as a runner than DeAndre Swift. So I think the Bears make a ton of sense, even if stylistically he is somewhat similar to Swift.
I know that Ben Johnson's probably fed up with DeAndre Swift. Prior to that long TD catch and run on Monday, Swift had just been missing holes and just tripping on the turf and stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Bears attack a running back as well, if they think they're contenders. And I think they're 3-2 at this point. So we'll have to see. Any other trade names that you want to talk about?
Yeah, Adam Schefter wrote just like a pretty big, expansive piece with like 30 or so different names involved in or potentially involved in trades. And I think the biggest name on the list was Chris Olave. Both Saints receivers were on the list between he and Rashid Shaheed. Chris Olave I think is a really interesting name. I think he's a very, very good receiver. Had some concussion, some injury stuff, doesn't have a new contract yet. It surprised me that he was on that list, and I think that there's maybe some smoke there potentially. The fact that I haven't seen many people talk about Olave as a potential trade candidate, but if he's available, I think he would be probably the number one receiver on the market right now.
And I'm not so sure that the Saints are gonna be sellers necessarily, and I know that they are 1 and 5, right? I just wanna
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sure. Yeah, they're 1 and 5, but out of all the 1 and 5 or 0 and 6 teams, they're far and away the best team. That's not the Ravens, because Lamar Jackson's hurt, but they've been much better than Tennessee, Miami, Cleveland, and the New York Jets so far. So if they string together 2 or 3 more wins here over the next couple weeks, and I know they play the Bears this week, I don't know if they'd wanna get rid of Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed, given that those 2 guys are the 2 difference makers as receivers. I'm kinda scrolling through, like, Underdog NFL does injury updates and stuff, or, like, does this player practice, and Trey Hendrickson didn't practice today, and he's questionable for the game tomorrow, and Jacoby Myers also did not practice, and people can be injured. That's a real thing. But every time we get into trade season and you see people not practicing, sometimes that's an indicator.
It is a yellow flag for sure to kind of see that. And yeah, you mentioned the Saints being, I would almost put it in a way that they're weirdly competent, right? Like I think Spencer Rattler has been um, not the best quarterback in the league, but I will say like kind of shockingly good a little bit. And I know I'm biased. I watched Spencer Rattler play in college and everything. But he looks like a legitimate NFL quarterback. And I like the like weapons around him too, between Olave and Shaheed. Juwan Johnson's provided a lot. Alvin Kamara still has some juice left in the tank, but yeah, I wouldn't necessarily want to move a guy like Olave or even Shaheed when you have a quarterback that's been as promising as Spencer Rattler. And even if he's not necessarily the guy that you want to start in 2026, you're going to have a pretty high draft pick to select the guy that's going to be helped out by a guy like Chris Olave on the roster.
And I'm looking at this compensation again. The Saints did trade for Devon Vele before the start of the season, so maybe that's their Olave replacement. Fourth rounder and a
Oh man,
seventh rounder for
what
that.
what has Devon Vele done this season? Do you know?
I think he returns kicks for them, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe punts.
It
Let me
was
look.
really funny to see Mickey Loomis call Devon Vele a nice young receiver, and he's like 28 years old. So Devon Vele has 4 catches for 29 yards and a touchdown this year. So interesting. I don't know why they would have him returning kicks. He's 6'5", 210, more of a like possession guy than anything else, but maybe they see something in practice that I don't. That's a weird plan for. Maybe they're justifying the fourth round pick compensation.
Fourth and a seventh because they had to
Right.
make up for the draft selection there. But yeah, maybe that's the guy of the future. I think I saw he has like 4 catches or something to this point. But yeah, I wouldn't rush to get rid of weapons if you're still evaluating Rattler as a guy.
Jalen Polk too. The Saints team traded for Jalen Polk, who's gonna miss this season, but I think they gave up a 6th and a 7th round pick for Polk. So shocked that he netted that sort of compensation with how he's looked so far in his NFL career. But the Saints team has acquired 2 quote unquote young promising receivers. So there is that.
Yeah, their room next year is going to be something special.
It will be. Let's move on to our games of the week. Jacob, who do you have as your game of the week?
This week's NFL slate is not as crispy, clean, possibly entertaining as some of the previous weeks. And there are a couple of good games like Tampa Bay, Detroit, the game that you are going to talk about. But my game of the week is a game of the week for a different reason. I'm saying that I want to make sure I'm right about the home team here. Yeah. Miami at the Cleveland Browns is going to be my game of the week. These are number 2 and number 4 in the projected draft order, according to Tankathon. Both teams are 1 and 5. I think there are some actual interesting position matchups here. We saw what Rico Dowdle was able to do against Miami's run defense. Quinshon Judkins, maybe he has a breakout game. What can Jalen Waddle do against an up and down secondary of the Cleveland Browns? And I think the most intriguing thing about this game is whoever loses it is just straight up done, right? If you can't beat the Dolphins, if you're the Browns, then that's probably it for Stefanski. If you can't beat the Browns, if you are the Miami Dolphins, that's probably going to be it for Mike McDaniel. I think the loser of this game is probably locked into a top 3 pick. And there are just a lot of implications on both sides. Mike McDaniels, if they lose, are they going to be sellers at the deadline? The Dolphins, if the Browns get blown out in this game, do we see Dylan Gabriel sat down soon for Shador Sanders? Like, I think there are a lot of implications on the line. It's not necessarily fireworks, but I think in the other way, it can be a good game.
The Shador Sanders thing to me reminds me of when you're playing college football. Like back in the day, it was like college football 11, 12, where you would commit to a team and then you would slowly just kind of rise to eventually becoming the starting quarterback over like the course of a season. That feels like what's happening with Shador Sanders, with just everybody in front of him either getting traded or just not really playing all that well in Dylan Gabriel's case. Um, that I do wonder how close we are to seeing him just in a, let's see what we have, let's evaluate sort of deal. It's also interesting to me that this Browns team doesn't have any other like veteran quarterbacks in that room. It's just a third round rookie and a fifth round rookie. Um, yeah, I feel like if Miami loses this game, there is a very real chance that Mike McDaniel is fired. I did see some propaganda this week that was saying the Miami Dolphins owner still believed in Mike McDaniel and was going to give him requisite time this season, but the vibes are like all time bad with this Dolphins team. You've got Tua Tagovailoa talking about how players are missing mandatory, or not mandatory, but they're missing player meetings and how it's a reflection upon leadership, which Tua, that's your job. um, that was weird. I think the Browns have maybe a little bit more leeway, and Stefanski in particular, just because of the history there, and he's won Coach of the Year. I think that they're willing to give him more time. I don't even know if he'll be fired if things go like super poorly this year, in all honesty. Like, even if they only win 3-4 games, I think there's a chance they still keep Stefanski around. But yeah, I think that there's a shot that McDaniel's fired if Miami loses this game. Who do you think has the matchup advantage here?
I think, I think Cleveland probably. It's at home. I like Cleveland's defense a lot better. I like their defensive front better. I just don't trust Dylan Gabriel at all, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like the experience of McDaniels and Tagovailoa and Waddle, I think it probably should be enough to get the win here. But I think I'm going to lean Cleveland getting their second win, just with it being at home, being probably the worst defense that Dylan Gabriel's going to face all year. I think there's just opportunities for wins. Like I said, Judkins against that run defense, I think is a good opportunity there. Like Harold Fannin against the linebackers of the Miami Dolphins. There's matchup wins there. I don't know. This could be like a 14-17 kind of game, but I think I'm gonna lean the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, to me, the best unit in this game is the Cleveland Browns defense, and I don't really think it's all that close, to be honest. Um, I think I'm going to lean Cleveland for that same reason. And yeah, like this Miami run defense is just downright horrendous. So if they're able to kind of get some push against that defensive line and Judkins can kind of get free, this Browns team might have their first 100-yard rusher in like a very long time. I don't know if Judkins has gotten 100 yards yet. Let me just look that up really quick before I say. Okay, yeah, so he actually had 100 yards against the Vikings, but before that, it was like a streak of almost 30 games without a 100-yard rusher. So he'll probably come close to repeating that stat line. But this Miami team is really bad. The vibes are terrible. Mike McDaniel again, the pessimism gimmick at the podium. Even if you're losing, you don't want to see that from your head coach. It's like downright nihilistic at this point. So it's just all sorts of bad on that side. So I definitely lean Cleveland, even if Miami was pretty close to winning this past week.
Like the McDaniel stuff, how high on the list of negative coach talk do you think it is? It's like top 3 for me. Like that's up there with the Joe Mazzulla. It's like we're all gonna die at some point, which is just weird. And then Brian Kelly, the LSU head coach, when they were talking about execution, he's like, well, maybe we all need to be executed for how we played.
It's definitely number one in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think there's a close number two right now.
Maybe since the
Maybe,
playoffs rant like 20 years ago.
yeah, maybe like Jonathan Gannon sometimes. I don't know if you saw like the Jonathan Gannon quote today about when did you have to learn as a coach to kind of
I
separate
did see that. Yeah.
I don't want to like say that I'm quoting it exactly, but he was asked about like separating the emotional side of football as a coach, and then his answer was when our quarterback was arrested in 2007. So he might be a close second, but yeah, I think McDaniels is by far number one if somebody measured that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just bad vibes. The 2 teams that you have for your game of the week, I think the vibes are much better.
Especially if you're a Falcons fan. And the Falcons play against the 49ers this week on Sunday Night Football, actually. And this Falcons team I want to highlight in particular because their metrics are shockingly good this year. And they've had maybe like the single worst single week vibes of any team this year after they lost 30-0 against the Panthers. But they've beaten the Bills. They look very competent. So they are currently second in offensive yards per game, and they are first in yards per game allowed in a positive way. So this Falcons team so far this year has an elite offense and an elite defense. They are 3-2. um, I think that them going up against the San Francisco 49ers team that's very banged up could be an interesting matchup. I think the 49ers still, even without Fred Warner, without Nick Bosa, um, all of the injuries that they have sustained so far this year, I still think that they're probably going to end up being favorites in this matchup. You obviously have the Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson Bowl, like both of those guys, probably two of the three best running backs in the NFL right now. But and I more so want to highlight just how good this Falcons defense has been from a down to down standpoint. Um, Incredible. Just truly just a very, very good defense so far this year. We were pretty skeptical that they were going to be able to turn it around, considering their only additions were rookies, basically. But those rookies, James Pierce, Jalen Walker, both looked really, really good against the Bills on Monday night. I think their second year defensive lineman, Rook Aurora, looks really good. They have the multiple players in the secondary that have impressed so far this year, and Jesse Bates might just be the best safety in the NFL. So, very, very impressed with the Falcons defense. I don't think they're best in the NFL good. Probably more so like borderline top 10, maybe. But yeah, like I think that this is going to be a really fun game to watch from many different aspects.
Top 3 running backs, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, and I can only assume you meant Rico Dowdle as the 3rd one, and Jahmyr Gibbs is
J-
a close 4th.
JT number one for me right
Jonathan
now.
Ta I forgot about Jonathan Taylor. Sneaky MVP candidate, Jonathan Taylor. Maybe not so sneaky anymore that the Colts are 5-1. This game, I'm just gonna say right now that I'm gonna lean the 49ers, even with all the injuries the 49ers face in their losses, like, they're still in the games against some of the better teams. It took toward the end of the game where, Mac Jones threw up an interception that the I don't even remember who the receiver was. I think it was Jawan Jennings. Just didn't even try to get the ball, and that ended the game. And then they lost to the Jaguars, where Brock Purdy, who was injured, gave the ball away 3 times. So I think the Niners are a good team. They're going to be at home. The Falcons, they're so interesting. Obviously, they get the win against Buffalo, shut Josh Allen down, shut the offense down, and look really, really good. They look really good. Excuse me. And then they come to Carolina and lose 30-0 in week 3 against the Minnesota Vikings, who had JJ McCarthy at the time. JJ McCarthy was just giving the ball away, and yet the Falcons couldn't score a touchdown. And then they go and take care of business against an injured Washington Commanders team. I don't know what to make of this team. I don't think that they're the best offense and defense in the league, even though that's how the yards per game stuff stacks up, but they are opportunistic. They are very good. And if everything's firing on all cylinders, I think this Falcons team is a good team. But I need to see them like consistently be good, stretch some wins together, have good offense and defense in back-to-back weeks before I throw the Falcons up there with the elite teams. But this should be a fun game. I think Bijan's going to have a good game. Hopefully, we see more Drake London magic. It's a shame that the touchdown at halftime didn't count. It's so close with him stepping out at the it was like the 2 yard line, but he had an excellent game. But yeah, I think we're gonna go 49ers. It looks like at least that Brock Purdy and George Kittle are both practicing this week.
I'm also going to go with the 49ers. I just think that even with the sustained, consistent um, injuries that the 49ers have had, I still think that if you have Brock Purdy potentially coming back, if you have George Kittle potentially coming back, their offense presents a challenge that, at least in terms of the explosivity, that Atlanta has yet to face so far this season. Maybe outside of that opening game against Tampa Bay, potentially. But, they have wins against Washington, Buffalo, Minnesota so far this year. And in those games against Minnesota and Washington, they're playing against quarterbacks that frankly don't look very good. In that Washington game in particular, they didn't go up against Jaden Daniels. That was one of the Marcus Mariota games. JJ McCarthy has looked pretty unimpressive, and I think I'm pretty sure that Carson Wentz is still starting for the Minnesota Vikings. I think he's tracking to play this week too. So we'll see how things progress for JJ McCarthy, but I don't necessarily think it's been the most impressive competition from a quarterback standpoint. One stat that I did have and I want to bring up that I think is just a little bit interesting. So far, the NFC has a record of 22-12 against the AFC in intern conference matchups. So there might be a little bit of a difference in terms of the level of play that we're getting from those high end teams in each conference right now, which is more so just a thing that I'm monitoring rather than a broad takeaway. But it does feel like we even talked about this, I think, on Sunday, how most of the teams in our 2 point conversion top 10 rankings are in the NFC, and the teams that are in the AFC that are on that list are either the Chiefs, the Colts, and like just teams that we didn't necessarily expect to be there, in the offseason. So that's one thing that I'm monitoring. But I say that in the context of the Falcons beating the Bills in the way that they did.
Yeah, every time the Falcons go up against a real QB, they just fold. Baker Mayfield, Bryce Young, when they get the backup caliber like Josh Allen. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's so weird that that's how the games have like stacked up for the Falcons so far. Both of their losses are division losses as well, and everybody outside the division has been a pretty convincing win, I would say. So it's just a weird team. I don't know what to make of the
Yeah.
Falcons.
It is weird. What do you make of Michael Penix so far this season? I know we talked about him a few weeks ago, but have there been any kind of major changes to how you've kind of viewed his play this year?
It's the same like, I thought he played much better in this past Monday night game, but it's the same thing as the Falcons as a whole. It's just pretty inconsistent. He played I thought he played well against Tampa in the opener, well enough to where he wasn't the reason they lost that game. And then against Minnesota, he didn't do much, if at all, even though he was gifted the ball a lot. Against Carolina, obviously, that's probably his worst game as a pro. And then I thought he was good against Washington and pretty significantly outplayed Josh Allen in this last game. So I don't know. I think there's fewer sprays, but a lot of the stuff I'm seeing is the result of Bijan Robinson. It's the result of Drake May, or not Drake May, Drake London catching the ball and doing something spectacular, like that touchdown catch. He was doing the Cam Newton reach over the end line there to score. Drake London was after some yards after the catch. So I'm not sure yet. My opinion hasn't changed on Penix so far, but if he continues to play like he did against the Bills, I'm going to think much more favorably of him throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think against the Bills, he was a little bit better. But like you said, I feel like a lot of the success from the Falcons offense has been more so the result of just superhuman plays by Bijan Robinson and Drake London in particular, rather than Michael Penix playing outwardly good. We'll say that.
It's like
Um,
it's like Bryce Young the last 2 weeks. He's been
yeah,
fine, but it's been Rico Dowdle, right?
right.
Which has driven the Carolina offense.
And it's weird because coming out of college, I thought that Penix would be more of a gunslinger, a risk taker, but it's been kind of the opposite so far this season. He only has 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions through 5 games, a completion percentage of roughly 62%, but still a negative EPA per drop back. It's a very quick release, very safe offense, a lot of pistol, actually a like record amount of pistol, and they're just getting the ball out quick for Michael Penix. And to me, I feel like they probably feel as though he's at least a little bit limited, especially the lack of pocket movement from Penix in particular. I just don't think he's super mobile. And we talked about him under pressure a few weeks ago, how he's just very, very quick to react to that sort of thing and not necessarily in a good way. So I'm monitoring Michael Penix. In no way do I think he's playing outwardly bad, but more so just kind of okay.
Well, stack him up against all the QBs in his draft class outside of McCarthy, who's played 2 games, I think.
Yeah.
This year, at least, he would certainly be the not the most disappointing, but the least spectacular out of all the second year guys. Drake May is obviously Drake May is an MVP candidate to me. Jaden Daniels, he's been injured, but I think he's picking up where he left off. Caleb Williams, massive improvement. Spencer Rattler, huge improvement with Kellen Moore as his coach, and then Bo Nix has been, whatever. But Penix hasn't really been outstanding, but he hasn't disappointed as much outside of the Carolina game, of course, either.
Let's just quick exercise. How would you rank just going forward if you had to pick your make a franchise quarterback list of that 2024 quarterback class? So Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. We'll throw Spencer Rattler in there, Bo Nix, Penix, and McCarthy.
Uh, May is obviously number one for me. Even in the
Yeah.
draft, he was QB1. So I'll go May Daniels, Williams, or May tier break, and then Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, and then it's so because McCarthy's only played in 2 games, but he looked pretty bad in most of the games. I think then I would go. We'll say Rattler, Penix, Nix, McCarthy. Maybe is how I would do it. Rattler's
Okay.
impressed me over he's played 6 games this season, but I would only take the top three if we're being serious franchise quarterback contenders. And really, it's just Drake May, but I think the top three all can make their case. And it's funny they went 1, 2, and 3 in the draft, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have a very similar list to you. So I think Drake May to me has looked the best. I think Jaden Daniels was pretty clearly, if you were taking stock after just the rookie season, he would probably be number one. But I don't think he's like necessarily looked the same. Maybe hasn't gotten much of the opportunity to look the same so far. But Drake May has looked incredible on basically every level this year, and doing so with a pretty poor supporting cast as well. I think I would take Caleb Williams second in the same tier as Jaden Daniels, though. Following that, I would take Rattler. I think he's been the most consistent, shockingly, between him and the other first round quarterbacks from 2024, that I haven't listed so far, obviously. But he to me has been playing his way into um, the territory of like these young quarterbacks that are let down by their team more often than they're letting their team down, kind of in the same mold of Cam Ward a little bit. But it does look like the Saints have found um, a little bit of a gem in Spencer Rattler. Um, After that, I would rank them Nix and Penix pretty close to each other, but I would slightly prefer Bo Nix. I think he's just a little bit more, maybe not even consistent is the right word, but we've gotten better highs from Bo Nix, I'll say. After that, I would have Penix and then another tier break. We haven't seen much of JJ McCarthy, but a lot of what we have seen has been um, pretty rough in the sense that I think it's just going to take a while for him to adjust to the NFL. Obviously, missed a whole season of football coming from a team where he didn't have many in-game throws. Like the amount of throwing reps he had live at Michigan are just so much less than what Penix got at Washington, what Bo Nix got at Oregon, and even to a degree what Spencer Rattler got at South Carolina. So it's hard to stack McCarthy up against those guys, but I think for now he has to be in last place.
If we go off of only the fourth quarter of week one for all of these guys, where would you have McCarthy? Probably number one, right?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
If the criteria we're using here is just the fourth quarter from their week one games, McCarthy has to be number one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, by default. But yeah, maybe a Bryce Young type of fourth quarter player.
Maybe. That's I was listening to this is a tangent, but the Carolina Panthers beat reporters, they do a podcast called Processing Blue, and they made a note that it seems like Bryce Young has to put himself in a hole to play better, and it seems like that's the case, which is just crazy. But if that's what works, that's what works.
All right, Jacob, let's get to the college football check in. So, what's going on around the country this week that you kind of want to make note of?
So I'm going to talk about Alabama, of course. They have another ranked matchup, Tennessee, the third Saturday in October. It's a pretty big rivalry between those two teams. Tennessee's coming to town. Jermod McCoy, the corner for Tennessee, potentially back this week. And this is a guy that I think probably is corner one. If you just go off of available tape, and obviously he hasn't played so far this year, but his tape last year was really, really good. And he has the potential to be the first, we'll say, non Caleb Downs defensive back taken. If he's back this week, it's going to be huge for Tennessee. And then Ty Simpson's going to go against a pretty good pass defense with Tennessee. So I would just keep my eye on the Alabama and Tennessee draft prospects. But I think the big story this week, at least, is what the coaching carousel is going to look like. James Franklin, Penn State's head coach, got fired on Sunday. It was actually right as we were recording on Sunday, I believe. He got fired from Penn State after losing 3 straight games, and I think one of the prime candidates, ironically, is former Carolina Panthers head coach Matt Rule, who has Nebraska ranked right now. It's been quite some time since Nebraska has been in the national spotlight. If you know anything about college football, you know that Nebraska is a blue blood, probably like in the 6th through 10th best college programs ever. It's just since the turn of the century, they've kind of fallen off. And Rule, he's not bringing them national championships or anything, but he's got them as a ranked team again, which is a huge step from the Scott Frost days. But I think he's a good candidate to go to Penn State. I say good as in like one of the favorites because he played there and he's seen as a program builder at the college level. So if Nebraska beats Minnesota this week, who I think Minnesota's 4-2, I think we might get some rumors about Rule going to Penn State. Also, weirdly, Rule's always been like a team apparel kind of guy. Even if you remember back to the Panthers days, he'd always have like the Panthers smock on at press conferences. He's had that at all of his college stops. Only Adidas today, no Nebraska logo, and Penn State is an Adidas school. Kind of weird there. Then the other big coaching thing is Florida. Their head coach Billy Napier. There was a rumor today by somebody who I think is pretty plugged in that Billy Napier is going to be fired no matter the result of their game this week. So the prime candidate there, people think, is Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss's head coach, and Ole Miss is undefeated this year. They're ranked number 5. So if they win at Georgia this week, I don't know if Lane Kiffin leaves because Ole Miss will probably make the playoffs. But if he loses, I think that's all the more reason to go to Florida there. So I don't know if you've been paying attention to the coaching carousel, but that's what I have my eye on this week.
Matt Rule to Penn State potentially. Crazy. Yeah, he's a Pennsylvania guy. I think he spent a lot of years in Temple, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
in Philadelphia. So that would be interesting. I always thought, like you mentioned on Sunday, Kurt Signetti would be a very, very good. Probably like if somebody's going to poach him away, Penn State's probably going to be the team to do so from Indiana. But uh, I really wonder what the likelihood is that he would leave Indiana for Penn State to begin with. But yeah, Matt Rule, interesting. Lane Kiffin, potentially interesting at Florida. Yeah, I feel like every time there's a rumor that Billy Napier is going to be fired, he ends up winning the next game by like 60 points. So we'll see if it happens. But I think I read like a rumor that they were talking to boosters in Florida's program um, about moving in a new direction. I think is that what the rumor was?
Yeah, and the boosters are fed up there.
Yeah,
The previous coaches were fired for a lot less, like Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen had them winning the SEC East back when there were 2 divisions in the SEC, and he got fired. The previous guy, like Will Muschamp, another guy, that Florida was like a consistent 9-3 team with him, and that wasn't good enough for them. And now you have Billy Napier, who I think has done a decent job recruiting for Florida, a couple of top 10 classes, but it hasn't materialized to wins. And a big part of that is Napier has refused to hire an offensive coordinator through, I think this is year 4 of Napier's tenure. And Napier's not a good play caller, like if you watch any kind of Florida tape. So I think his time is up. And it's just going to be interesting to see who Florida goes after because, like Penn State, Florida's a pretty top tier program. I'd say top 15 in terms of college football jobs. So it's going to be interesting. I saw the Notre Dame coach, Marcus Freeman. There's a rumor that he might want out there. I don't know why, because the resources you get at Notre Dame are basically infinite, and they just made the national championship last year. But if he wants out, that could be another look there as well.
yeah. DJ Lagway, I think playing. He's been pretty disappointing this year. I would say, maybe more so inconsistent than disappointing. And I feel like he verbally said last year when there were like firings happening that he was committed to Florida no matter who the coach was there. So I was honestly surprised when they didn't remove Billy Napier from the job last year, even though they had quite the comeback in the second half of the year. But yeah, certainly not the best spot for this Florida program to be in currently.
And it sucks as like we're both SEC fans. I remember growing up watching like Tim Tebow. That's when I started watching college football, and Florida was routinely in the SEC championship before the Georgia days. So it's just like they're a top tier program, I think, and it's kind of unfortunate every time there's a good school that isn't a rival school that just kind of falls off there. You kind of want them. I want them at least to be good. I have a good friend who went to Florida, so he's like complaining every week about Billy Napier. It's just funny.
So moving on, we have just our takes left so far. Jacob, what is your first take for week 7?
We talked a lot about trade candidates earlier, like all the Dolphins players, some receivers, Brees Hall. And I think our first big trade, like in quotations, is going to happen within a week of today or whenever we're recording. So this we'll probably finish here like 8:30 Eastern time. We already had Joe Flacco traded. We had Tyson Campbell and Greg Newsome, two corners swapped for each other. I wouldn't necessarily categorize those as big trades. What I'm thinking is like you're going to get like a top 100 pick traded, or a playoff contender is going to trade for a starter like a Brees Hall. That would be like a big trade. Jacoby Myers, if he goes to one of those teams we talked about. Chris Olave obviously would be huge. I think the playoff teams, or the teams that are in the playoff hunt, know by now if they need to make a move, right? We've seen 6 weeks of football. It, teams obviously have deficiencies, and if they want to make playoff runs, they have to make changes, or they have to add people. And I think the bad teams also know by now that they're really bad. I don't think there's any doubt that the Jets aren't going to be a playoff team this year, right? Or the Dolphins. They should know that they need to sell pieces right now, and that's why I said earlier my game of the week is Cleveland and Miami. If Miami loses, they should know that they need to sell and get new draft capital for next season. Uh, Kind of a niche thing, but it's called the People's Insider, I guess, a Twitter account by the name of Ricky the Dog, who broke a ton of news over the past couple of years. He revived his account today and said all these players are on the trade block, and then deleted his account. So if that is foreboding to anything, or forebodes anything, I guess that means people are on the trading block. I just think there are too many candidates for us to not see a trade. So my take is going to be within a week, we're getting a significant trade.
Ricky the Dog was first on the Micah Parsons trade, right?
Yeah, he got a ton of stuff over the past couple of years, but he had the Parsons one like back in around draft time, if I'm not mistaken.
That would be quite interesting if he just came back and got a couple more hits off. But yeah, I'm gonna give this an A plus. I think we're due for not just one, but I think several different trades of high quality starting level players. I just feel like there's so many bad teams already in the NFL that everybody just knows who the sellers are. There's some teams that have more flexibility in that than others. But yeah, I mean, we talked about four or not more than four, like the entire Dolphins team is basically for sale at this point. But we've talked about many different players that could and probably should be traded. So I think at some point we're overdue for the first one to happen.
Yeah, like the Chiefs, right? It seems almost a given that they're going to get somebody. They've been doing that the past couple of years,
Yeah.
whether it's a running back, another receiver, maybe a pass rusher or something. Who knows? But I just feel like one's going to happen soon.
Yeah, yeah. It always does with Kansas City. They always add some sort of player. But kind of piggybacking off of your first take, I think the Cardinals are going to be one of those teams that make a trade, maybe more so of the desperation variety. So this past offseason, the biggest investment that the Cardinals made into their offense was their backup quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, in a 1 year, $5 million contract. I think they make another investment. I think Kevin Zeitler potentially as sort of offensive line reinforcements is somebody I could absolutely see Arizona trading for. Not only that, but obviously you have the Tennessee Titans firing their coach. I think that they're going to make the move of JC Latham inside. I think it's coming at some point. To me, and I've in the process of writing an article on it. He does not seem like he's capable of, hanging on the outside. I think he's a little bit too slow in his drops. It's just he's consistently beat outside with timing, with speed. I think if you kick him inside, he could be a pretty good guard. Because of that, you're probably going to have to move Kevin Zeitler if you want to make that decision sooner. So I think it's a mixture of the Cardinals being desperate. They really need offensive line help. And then the Titans have a candidate that I think would fit very, very well.
I'm gonna go A here as well. The current like The Cardinals are already easily the worst team in that division, right? The Rams are good, the 49ers are good, the Seahawks are good. I think a couple of those teams have beat the Cardinals too. And if they want to continue to be in the playoff race, they got to add somebody. I think a running back is also on the table for them. Brees Hall could be there. I don't think Carolina would trade anybody, but if somebody throws a first, or not a first, but maybe like a second for one of the running backs, I think Carolina would have to consider that. And the Cardinals just seem like a running back team, like we talked about earlier. The Cardinals, the Chiefs, the Chargers, all the C teams basically need a starting running back. So I could see something like that happening with Arizona. You mentioned Jacoby Brissett, by the way, who started this past weekend. I don't think he looked terrible. Obviously, he
Did
can't
not.
do a lot of the escapability stuff that Kyler can do, but I thought the offense ran kind of smooth up until the point that Harrison Jr. left the game.
Yeah, I thought he was mostly fine, honestly. Um, yeah, like the Cardinals team has also been very, very bad at running the football, and I get they don't have James Conner, they don't have Trey Benson, but the offensive line and I think the coaching in particular has been so much worse from 2024. So yeah, it's kind of a shot in the dark in terms of that exact trade happening, but I think something along those lines, and more so in the sense that the Cardinals will make a desperation move. Like Jonathan Gannon might be coaching for his job right now, all things considered, especially after the loss to the Tennessee Titans in cartoonish fashion.
Yeah, and the sideline incident
Yeah.
there. Yeah, the Cardinals, yeah, I think they're one of the teams that is prime for maybe a desperation type of trade there. My second and final take here is probably the hottest take that I've done so far on this podcast. And I think right now, the QB that is playing the best football in the AFC East is Drake May. I think he has been phenomenal outside of, we can say maybe the Steelers game, but even in the Steelers game, I don't think it was his fault. Like there are a lot of fumble. I think Ramondre Stevenson had a couple fumbles in the red zone. That was the game that I don't remember if it was Pop Douglas or Kayshawn Booty or maybe Kyle Williams, the rookie, that it was a fourth down and one, and he like decided to run backwards instead of forwards, and so they lost the game there. I think Drake May's been incredible. I think Josh Allen has taken a like significant step down from what he was last season. Every time that James Cook, the running back, gets bottled up, the offense just kind of slows down there. Despite the Bills having a pretty good offensive line, they don't have any receivers, and that's not Josh Allen's fault. But I think Drake May is just playing at another level right now. Drake May is an MVP candidate, in my opinion, probably top 4 to 5, and he's really dragging that offense to wins. And they are number one in the division right now after the Bills lost on Monday. So it might be bold, or it's definitely bold, but I think Drake May right now is playing the best football out of all the QBs in the AFC East.
So the way you phrased this take is much different than the way you had it in our document.
All right.
Uh,
All right. I'll say it how I have it in the document. That one's just hard to prove because Josh Allen just came off of an MVP season. I wrote
right.
down that Drake May is the best QB in the AFC East, and that might be premature because we don't have enough data to back that up necessarily. So I kind of reworded it to playing the best. But you feel free to answer either way or grade this take on either front.
So I will be much more generous in that I will use the way that you phrased it live instead of Drake May being the best quarterback in the NFC or in the AFC East period. I'll say that he is in fact playing the best football of any quarterback in the AFC East currently. I'm going to give that a B plus. I still think Josh Allen is ridiculously good. He's won games for that Buffalo Bills team. I get that Drake May beat him straight up one-on-one. I think he was the better quarterback in that game too. And really, if you think about it, both of these guys don't really have all that much help in the passing game outside of their offensive lines, really. But Drake May has been playing at a top 5 level so far this season. And I think he has slightly outplayed Josh Allen, at least in 2025. I'll make that very clear in 2025. There's a very real case that Drake May is playing better than any quarterback in the NFL right now, all things considered. So Yeah, I'm gonna give this a B plus. I can't get all the way there because it is still Josh Allen, but I do like this take, and I love any sort of Drake May sort of propaganda, if you will. Um, right now, he's leading the NFL in total passing EPA, so there is that. He's done it against pretty good competition, like the Panthers in Week 4. So, yeah, I like it. I like Drake May. I'm happy you had this on here because he's a phenomenal player and has only looked better and better as the season has gone along.
Every time I get glimpses of Patriots games on Red Zone, or if I go back and like watch the replays of games, I'm just more convinced that this team somehow is going to find its way into the playoffs. I don't know if they'll win the division, but maybe they get like the 6 wild card or the 7 seed or something. It's just every time you see Drake May, he's dragging the team to a win. So it's hard to count him out.
He's a very, very good football player. We just ranked the 2024 rookie quarterback class, and he was first for both of us. So, um,
Resoundingly first, like in
like
his own tier.
it is undoubtedly he's been the best so far, at least in 2025. I get that it's like a whole career assessment, but so far in 2025, he has been an elite level quarterback. And there's truly just not many guys I would take over Drake May if I'm starting a franchise from scratch right now.
Oh yeah, like how old is Josh Allen? This is like year
I think
9
he's
for him, right?
29.
29, you're
Um,
right. Turned 29 this season. Mahomes is what, 30?
so
Yeah, he's 30.
I'll go ahead and say I'm going to take Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson over Drake May if I'm
Yeah.
starting a franchise. But the list legitimately might end there, to be honest.
I might throw Justin Herbert in there as well. He's a little
Yeah,
younger, but
yeah.
then again, Herbert, some his fault, some his team's fault. Like has crumbled in the playoffs, but yeah, the list is that short. Like that's where Drake May is right now for me.
Yeah, and look at Justin Herbert. Like if you're factoring in current contracts, I would probably take Drake May above Justin Herbert, just
Yeah.
because of the advantage that rookie contracts offer. But yet, like he has been playing at just such an unbelievable level, and I'm consistently impressed week to week with the amount of stuff he's done. He should have had like 4 or 5 like 40 plus yard passing touchdowns against the Saints. It was insane. 2 of them were called back for essentially no reason. And the Patriots still won that game, and he still had like 2 or 3 of them. Just an absurd player. Very, very good at football.
Also throwing to let's call them like tier 3 receivers. Maybe Diggs is still a second tier receiver
Yeah, Diggs has looked good the past 2, 3 weeks, we'll say,
since the Bills game.
since the Bills
Funnily
game.
enough.
Yeah, he even looked good against the Panthers a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think the offensive line improvements are real. I still would like to see more Trevion Henderson, but yeah, I think this offense is really starting to light around Drake May. So the last take that I have, not to be a homer, but I think the Panthers run the Jets out of MetLife Stadium, quite literally, honestly. I think they beat the Jets by 15 plus points. So this Jets team is coming off of a London game with no bye week. That's pretty rare in itself. They're not going to have Garrett Wilson. The Panthers are getting most of their injured players back. I know that they just lost Patrick Jones for the season, but they're going to get Jalen Coker back, potentially Taylor Moton as well. This Panthers run defense is shockingly good compared to where it was a year ago. Last year, they were like 30 or 40 yards worse on a per game basis in terms of rushing yards allowed than any other NFL team. This year, they've been top 3 since week 2 by most metrics in terms of run defense. So it is a complete turnaround by Ejiro Evero, by Dan Morgan, adding the personnel needed there. And obviously, Derek Brown getting him back has been massive as well. So this feels like a game where Carolina could solidify themselves as maybe not a playoff team, but definitely a real serious NFL team.
Win by 15 or more. I would love to A plus this, but the fact that you added 1 point on top of 14 is scaring me a lot. So I'm just going to give this an A. 15 points is a lot of points, for especially for a Panthers team that doesn't have a lot of 15 plus point wins over the past couple of years. We have one this year, obviously against the Falcons that we talked about earlier. But I do think, and I'm trying to avoid the jinx, the trap game here, but I do think the Panthers match up particularly well with this Jets team. Their strength is in running the ball, both with Brees Hall and Justin Fields, and the Panthers' defense's strength is in shutting down the run. Back to back week, or not even back to back. If you combine the last 2 weeks of against the Cowboys, who had Javonte Williams, who's playing well, and against the Miami Dolphins, who have Devon Achane, who's incredible, both of those teams combined rushed for 50 yards against the Carolina Panthers defense. Incredible. Last year, the team was giving up, it was like 140 yards rushing per game, which is just despicable. And this isn't even like the entire Panthers defense or the entire Panthers team. They're getting back Tershawn Wharton, who was a big free agent signing, or assumed to be getting him back this week. Chuba Hubbard might be back this week. Jalen Coker, who was quietly Bryce Young's second favorite target to Adam Thielen at the end of last year. He might be back playing his first game this week. Just a lot of people. Austin Corbett is designated to return to practice. The former starting center, probably a depth piece lineman. Taylor Moton, the right tackle, didn't play last week. Like, there are so many reinforcements Carolina could get back, and I think they match up well. My only concern is keeping Justin Fields, I guess, contained and not allowing outside rushes, like him getting outside the tackle. But other than that, I think the team matches up well. I think this could be another game in which the Panthers quite literally keep pounding the rock, running the ball, and hopefully we get a win. Like, this would be Bryce Young's, I think, only second road win in his time starting with the Panthers. So I think the Panthers. This is a must-win game for Carolina, and I think we will get the win. Just the 15-point marker you put there is making me hesitate a little bit. So I'm going to give it an A instead of an A plus.
Do you know the last time? I don't have the stat on hand. Do you know the last time they've won 3 games in a row?
I do. It was the same time that the Panthers were above 500, the start of the 2021 season. Matt Rule's second season, we beat the Jets, the Saints, and then the Texans on a Thursday night. And we started 3 and
Oh
0,
wow, yeah,
and then ended that year 5 and 12.
nuts. Yeah, that's
But I
crazy.
mean, that would be incredible. It would be the first time, if we don't want to count that since it's the start of the season, right? It would be the first time since, I think, the start of 2019 we were 3 and 2, and then back to 2018 where we were a legitimate playoff contender before Cam Newton's shoulder was separated. So it's a long time coming, and that's why I think this is a must-win game for Carolina.
I have to imagine like second place in that regard is so much more recent than 2021, but I could be completely wrong. Like the Jets have probably not done it in forever either, honestly. So with that, I think we're going to get out of here. We've covered a lot today, some trade candidates, some really good teams that we're buying or selling. Obviously, the games of the week, college check in, gave some takes. Jacob, is there anything else you wanted to mention before we get out of here?
In, I think it's 9 or 10 days, we will be exactly 6 months away from the next NFL draft and 6 months away from the last one. I think that's a perfect time for us to throw out our first 2026 mock draft within reason, right? Because
Yeah,
we did one right after the draft, but that's always like the way too early one. So I would keep my eye out for that, and I'm looking forward to doing that one.
absolutely. With that, we're going to get out of here. You can follow Jacob at Jacob Acquire, myself at dj.png. You can follow the show at 2p_conversion. On Spotify, you can follow us, or on Apple Podcasts. Be sure to check out our website, 2pointconversion.com. You can subscribe to our site there as well. And yeah, we're going to get out of here. Appreciate everybody for listening. Make sure you follow those socials, and we will be back